Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. We are recording this on, wow, it's March already, March 2nd of 2015. Is this going to be another one of those years that just blazes by, Ramon?
Probably.
I mean, last year it was like, did it really happen?
The last 10 years just slipped by.
Well, 2012 seemed to be like almost regular time. I mean, it was a little faster than normal, but 2013 and 14, it's just like a blink of my eye and it was gone. Wow.
Yeah. You start to wonder because, I still hear like young kids saying how slow, like they want to be done with school and stuff like that, and it's so slow for them. But for us, it's just like speeding up.
Is that age thing?
That's why I'm wondering, is time really speeding up, or is it because we're all getting older?
Yeah, I don't know. It might all just be a matter of perception.
Yeah.
I look at the clock and the seconds go by just as fast now as they used to, but you put it all together, it's just out there.
Yeah, I find a day, like, especially if you're off, it's like 10 in the morning, and then next thing you look, it's 7 p.m.
Yeah. So what's going on in the world, Ramon? You got a couple of things you want to touch on tonight before we get rolling?
Yeah, actually I have a few things. Paris has turned the Eiffel Tower into a wind energy machine, which is really exciting, using what you have.
They put a big windmill on the side of the tower, or what?
Yeah, it's not like your stereotypical windmill. It's more like the curved, kind of long stick, and as the wind hits it, it turns. It's inside the tower, so it's not something that is an eyesore. So it's not like sticking out of the tower. Placed on the monument, second level, 400 feet off the ground, the turbines can capture the wind from every direction and generate enough electricity to power the tower's commercial operations.
Wow.
Not directly, though. The 10,000 kilowatts of electricity produced by the turbines flow into the Paris grid.
Wow, that's impressive. 10,000 kilowatts?
Yeah, let me see if I read that correctly. That's 10,000 kWh, right?
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a lot of power.
Nice generator.
Yeah, and here's something else when it comes to wind. Artificial wind trees use micro-turbine leaves to generate electricity. So this is not a real tree, but it looks like a real tree, and the leaves are little turbines. They're like long. So what do they look like? Actually, they look like it's the shape of a corn. Would be the best description. Great design can be recognized at a first glance, and this next one is pure genius. We are talking about this amazing wind turbine, which looks like a tree. Integrating perfectly into the surroundings, the wind turbine generates energy in an eco-friendly way, using a natural resource, and has a pleasant aspect in contrast with other classical turbines. The technology was developed by a French company called New Wind, and the look of the wind turbine is identical with those of trees. The efficiency of the products is guaranteed by the fact that it is functional in low wind too. Something we can say about other products from this category. But still, the best feature of the product is its looks and the fact that it doesn't interfere with harmony of nature, as it manages to blend in perfectly. I'm trying to find where it says how much power this thing generates, but it doesn't say. The funny thing about the French, I think for the last 15 years, I've seen a lot of really, really good ideas come out of the French when it comes to wind energy and air cars. Their main element must be wind because they're always coming out with these great ideas, But this is something like a regular tree that can fit right in your front yard, backyard, and, it's not like the traditional turbines that it's so big. I remember a friend of mine's had one close to his house, and they had to take it down because whenever a storm came through, one of the blades would take off. So it became too dangerous, and then there was a big complaint about it harming the birds flying by, crashing into it and stuff like that.
Right.
But these don't do any of that, So
I know I've driven by or through a bunch of the wind farms down in California. And they are definitely a big eyesore. I mean, you've got these huge fields full of these wind turbines, and they're just ugly. I mean, they got them stuck out in the middle of the desert, so it's not like they're right in the middle of town, but they're definitely kind of an eyesore.
Yeah. So the last thing I just want to toot my own horn there. In the science fiction and fantasy, my first book made it to number 9, but it slipped back down to actually number 20 now. So just in the fantasy section, not the whole thing. So that's exciting. Thank you. And the last thing I want to say before we bring our guests, because this story actually has to do with our guests, and I recently had brought some products. One was called the African Dream Bean, and the other one was Mugwort, and the other one is called just Dream Herb. And the other night, 2 nights ago, I actually took some of the Mugwort and the Dream Herb together and smoked some of it. And I went to bed, and it was weird because it wasn't like a normal out-of-body experience, because usually I can remember those really good, but it felt like an out-of-body experience, and there was the whole thing of being lucid and being able to control and know that I was dreaming, and I was doing the dial thing where, it looks too dark, so I turn it up to get some light so I can see better and stuff like that.
Adjusting the environment.
Yeah, and that's just, you imagine that you have 2 dials in front of you, and you just turn it for the light, and you just keep turning until you get the right lighting. So, yeah, adjusting the environment around you. So, speaking of, who do we have?
We have got Darryl Berry Jr. with us tonight. Darryl has been a longtime practitioner, researcher, and observer of all things metaphysical, mystical, and cutting edge, including the out-of-body experience or astral travel, extraterrestrial life, consciousness development, channeling, telepathy, spirituality, including A Course in Miracles, and fourth density thought. He started to astral travel at about 4 or 5 years old, and since then he's met the deceased, interacted with extraterrestrials, traveled through time, traversed outer space, and interacted with spiritual beings. He's currently publishing books and building a center called Next Density, through which to share what he's learned to help facilitate the progress of the human race. His first book, Travel Far, A Beginner's Guide to the Out-of-Body Experience, including first-hand accounts and comprehensive theory and methods, will be published June 20th of this year. He's got pre-orders available on his website, and that is www.darrylberryjr.com. That's Darryl, DarrylEberryjr.com. Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Darryl.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, you know what? For there's so many of us that are on this spiritual, mystical life path, trying to figure out who and what we are, what we're here for, what this is all about, and what are our capabilities? What can we do within this place that we find ourselves? And I know from my own personal experience and so many people that we've talked to, that one of the big catalysts that put me on this path was the proverbial 2x4 upside the head that got me moving and got me asking questions. Now, just reading your bio here, this is saying that you started to have the out-of-body travel experiences very early in your life. Would you give us some background on how this all developed for you? And I mean, it sounds like you didn't have to have the 2x4.
Well, I mean, I guess you can say that was my 2x4. Like my introduction into metaphysics was my first out-of-body experience. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, around dusk, around the evening time of the day one day, I started to feel sort of tired and lethargic. And I told my mom I'm not feeling too well. I'm going to go ahead and lie down and get some rest, and hopefully I'll feel better later. And I went to lay down, and, I remember walking to the bed. As I got closer to the bed, my body started feeling heavier and heavier. I finally plopped myself down on the bed and went to sleep. And after an indeterminate amount of time, I suddenly felt better. And I got up to go tell my mom I was feeling better, since, previously I had told her I wasn't feeling well, so she wouldn't worry. And I got up out of bed as normal and walked to the door. But a strange thing happened when I went to open the door. My hand just whoosh went through the doorknob. And I tried to open the door again, and my hand went through the doorknob. And I looked back on the bed, and I noticed a lump on the bed with some sheets over it, which I surmised was my physical body. And that was my introduction into the experience.
Wow. I had a spontaneous out of body when I was 5, and it was I didn't put anything together at that age. I had no idea what the hell happened. I thought it was just a trippy dream, and but in retrospect, and this experience stayed with me my whole lifetime. I mean, I remembered it vividly through my whole lifetime. But I just kind of pushed that back on the back burner and left it alone, and never really thought about it much again until I was in my 20s and got the 2x4. So is this something that was a regular experience for you? Did you start having these after this first experience, where was it something that continued to happen for you?
Yes, it was. For many years, I would have experiences every night. And I think one of the things that triggered, when I started thinking about everything that happened, one of the things that triggered, I think, my uprising experiences was my infatuation with flying. And I'd be infatuated with, like, Superman. And I remember I used to watch Mighty Mouse and shows like that. And one time I had a flying dream. And I wanted to continue having flying dreams because they were so fun. So what I started doing was I would, every night when I went to sleep, and I was so excited to try to fly again, that I would be anxious. I would be in bed early, ready to go to sleep and try to fly. So I would go to sleep and visualize myself flying, and concentrate and visualize myself flying. And I intuited that if I could just focus strong enough as I go to sleep, maybe I could make myself continue to fly as I go to sleep. And that's what happened. I will visualize myself flying, and eventually I will start to be able to lay down for sleep and visualize myself flying so much that I would not have a break in consciousness. And my physical body would go to sleep, and I would go to flying throughout the night. And that's when my experiences started to accentuate. And I started to have an uprise of floating out of body and flying throughout the night, and it just progressed from there. So I kind of stumbled upon an out-of-body technique early, and it took off.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and especially at that age where your imagination is completely open and it's not, you haven't been taught the you can't do that yet kind of mentality. Where, I think for a lot of people, they try to get into this once they're older and it becomes a little more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult than, for example, a 5-year-old kid. You know, that kind of reminds me of also my experience, because I had my first out-of-body experience when I was like 3 or 2, and mine was more trying to get the baby bottle in the hand going through. But I didn't even think about it as a kid. Did you find that in your teenage years that became more difficult, or you just kept doing it and kind of mastered it?
Well, I mean, I would say in my later teenage years, it became more difficult. Most of my teenage years, not because the experience became less difficult, as in I started to less believe in it, or people started telling me it was a dream or anything. It just became less difficult because it became less of a focus. Like, I started to be involved in girls and school, and my intention just wasn't as focused on it. You know, so I would say like the majority of my experiences were between the ages of, say, 5 and 12. And as I started to get into my teenage years, I started to realize what it was and started to read on it a bit. But still, even though I did a lot of reading on it, my attention wasn't as much on practicing it. You know, I remember in high school, I was like in the band, and I was like in the choir, and I was in the drill team, and I did so many things that my attention wasn't on it as much. But what stuck with me was the potential. Like, and as I got older, it started to be more of a purposive thing. Like, when I wanted to investigate something, if something really motivated me, then I would practice again and go investigate it. But I would say, like, in my let's say preteens to early teens, at one period I got to the point to where I did not have a break in consciousness anymore, and it was quite trippy because the world started to seem sort of quasi-real. Like, it started to become like there was not a dream world or a non-physical world, and it wasn't a physical world. It started to become one blend, which was very strange, and that's when I started to kind of slow down a bit, just because it was just it seemed so strange, you know. But as I got older, you know, this became more of a purposive thing when I really wanted to investigate something.
So when it became a blend for you, did you feel like that was more of a reality, or did you think you were losing your mind, or it just scared you a little bit?
I think it was just disconcerting. I think it just takes getting used to. I remember reading about someone's experiences where they got to that point, and he almost drove his car off a ledge because he wasn't aware if he was dreaming or physical. So I guess it was just it just seemed odd. I think it's just something. I really think that that's something that the human race is developing towards, but maybe I just wasn't ready. Like, another experience I had, I would say I guess I was in my late teens. And I was reading the works of these two channelers. They channel these two beings named Oren and Dabin, and they wrote this book called Personal Power Through Awareness that talked about telepathy. And I experimented with telepathy, and I got to the point that I was able to hear people's thoughts, and I got to the point to where, like, most people don't realize it, but whenever, I guess not whenever, but oftentimes when we interact with people, there's a subconscious telepathic communication with that person. So let's say you might be speaking with someone, and you know, you're talking about the weather, and you might hear the person subconsciously think, you know, I hope he doesn't notice, you know, my shoes or something. You know, there will be some subconscious thought, and then the person might say something. Oh my gosh, I stuffed these shoes right here. You know, and it's pretty odd, and even that started to feel kind of overwhelming because I think it's just out of habit. We're so used to having a great demarcation between waking and sleeping, and that's why I think so few people are aware of the out-of-body experience, because so few people are aware of their dreams. It's just the way our society is built. we have a great demarcation. You're awake, and that's real, and whatever you experience in sleep, that's a dream, and don't worry about it. Even though we have psychoanalysis, and they know that our dreams are a great reflection of what's in our mind. I mean, that's the basis of psychoanalysis. But still, it hasn't penetrated our consciousness as a whole. So I think it's a part of our progression as a human race to begin to be able to incorporate that level of fluidity of consciousness in our normal everyday being. So, that's one of the reasons why I'm talking about it, and to help spread awareness and to help push us in that direction. It's just contrary to the habit that we've made of having such a great demarcation, and that's where the idea of density comes from. Like third density is very demarcated, very segregated. Everything is seen separate. We have all kind of different ways of separating each other from each other because of our skin color, or because of, the country we live in, or because of how much money we have. Everything is separation, and we do the same thing with our consciousness. We separate. So as we move into this new density, the fourth density, to be more about integration. And I think that's one of the integrations that will happen. We will learn to balance the non-physical and the physical to the point that we don't have to have such a great demarcation between them in order to feel, grounded,
Exactly, and that's exactly why we do this show, is to helping that blending to happen here on this planet. I mean, there's so many people that are coming online in this time on planet Earth. When I say coming online, I'm talking about those abilities that are becoming active, and they're starting to put the pieces together. We're starting to understand that this isn't crazy. The fact that I talked to a UFO the other day, that's not crazy, because you have other people out there now that are sharing their experiences about all these bizarre and mystical and miraculous events. I mean, for lack of a better term, these are all, the supernatural events, and the key word there is natural, that people are experiencing. It's part of who and what we are, and these things are coming online on the planet now, and we have got to get a hold of them. We've got to get a grasp and understanding of what the hell is going on here, or we're going to end up just, we'll implode if we don't have a release and an understanding of our current situation.
Oh, the mailman.
I mean,
go ahead.
One of the things that the out-of-body experience greatly did for me was expand my perspective. Like the fear of death, like the idea around death. There's so much fear around that. You could not only learn that you survived death, but you can learn that your relatives and friends survived death. You could become consciously aware directly of extraterrestrial life. I really think that if more people were able to do it, I mean, that in itself would change the nature of the world. As we start to become aware, like one of the biggest demarcations that we have is our physical body in the world. Your skin color is that way and mine is that way, or your culture is that way. But imagine if we all experienced ourselves as consciousness. I remember one experience I had as a kid. I suddenly became aware in the out-of-body experience. This was around a period of time when I used to just float out of body spontaneously every night. And usually I would float out of body in my non-physical body, and I wasn't even aware that there was anything different. But in one particular night, I was floating up towards the ceiling on the other side of the room from my bed, which was strange. But then I noticed I didn't have a body. I was just a point or focus of conscious awareness, like a field of awareness that was floating in the air. And I directed my attention towards my bed, and I saw my non-physical body floating in the air. And then I looked on the bed, and I saw my physical body on the bed, right? So I realized that we have a physical body. We also have a non-physical body that can leave the physical body. And we also have our essence that can leave the non-physical body. And that essence is the same with everyone. Anyone who learns how to go out of body and gets out of body, and they could leave their non-physical body, and you will be that same essence. And you can realize that everyone is the same. All the different ways that we demarcate ourselves by race and class and nation and position, all of those things are really meaningless. Not only that, but it extends beyond the human race. I mean, any extraterrestrial will have that same consciousness. Any non-physical being would have that same consciousness. So, it really is a way to get beyond the different things that limit us and help maintain such a fragmented society that allows things like war and caste systems and things like that has the world in the way that it has been for thousands of years. So I really think the fact that these things are coming to the forefront is an indication of a shift in consciousness, a shift in the way of thinking that is pretty much allowing these things to resurface. And I think what's going to happen is our terminology will change. Like words like supernatural will have no more meaning because we will recognize these things as just natural. Just like eventually race will have no meaning. You won't be a black person and a white person and a Chinese person. You'll just be a human being, an earth human being. And what planet are you from? So I really think our whole vocabulary will change to start to reflect, these interchanges that we have that's allowing these topics to come to the forefront.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I think our vocabulary is changing already. I mean, geez, I don't know how many new words have been created just in the last 4 or 5 years through this type of research. The people that are looking into spirituality, the soul, the energy, quantum physics. Things like, here's the exopolitics. There's a new word. We've got all sorts of new words that are being coined to help to describe these experiences and better describe these experiences and these phenomena in our lives and in a way that is not divisive. I think you follow what I'm saying there.
That's right.
Anyways,
That's right. I agree.
I apologize for the dogs going off a couple of minutes ago. My nephew and a friend of his from work have showed up, and they may be tossing in a question or two during this show. So
okay.
We have Jake and Greg here with us also. So just so you know.
Okay.
Cool. So going back to the telepathy thing, because there's always the thought that only those who have, when you talk about telepathy in these circles, there's always the one common thread that I hear about it, and it's always like, you shouldn't pay attention to that because then you get unfocused from becoming enlightened. Once you become enlightened, then that just gets easy, and I can never understand that because to me, telepathy was always like learning a new language. You don't wait till you become enlightened to learn how to speak English or Spanish or whatever language you may speak. So I always looked at telepathy as another skill, not really as a spiritual thing as people made it sound.
I agree.
It's a skill like writing or something like that. So one of the questions that I have for you about telepathy is how did you, what was the techniques you used in order to develop it?
It was a long time, but if I remember, it was basically just opening up and listening. Just opening up and being aware. My understanding of it is, especially since I've studied other things like A Course in Miracles about the mind, all minds are already joined. So telepathy is less of an effort to hear someone else's thought and more of a cessation of putting up barriers between each other. So the idea that we cannot hear each other's thoughts is really an imposition that we're putting on ourselves to help facilitate the idea and belief that we're separate. That's why if you speak with anyone who's had contact with advanced extraterrestrial races, all of them are telepathic. One of your shows I listened to was an awesome show with Lisa Royale. You know, the Pleiadians, they're telepathic. She spoke about Bashar with their society. They're all telepathic, right? Because they have less of an investment in separation and third density, so that barrier is not there. So at the time, I was doing a lot of things, which I still do, but I was doing a lot of things like focusing on loving people, forgiving, letting go of barriers. And if you just open up and listen, it's just there. The communication is there. It's just like a radio. There's always frequencies going on all the time. But if you don't turn your dial to that station, you're not going to hear it. So what we usually do is we simply turn our radio off. So really our radio is off so we can block that out. Which is understandable because, like I said, it started to become very disconcerting. As well as the fact that so often people say things people act and say things that are contrary to their inner feelings. So that was concerning as well. You'll be speaking with someone and they'll say something else and you can hear subconsciously they're saying something else, and you wait a day or two and sure enough they really believe whatever the thing they was thinking unconsciously. So it could be disconcerting. But what's going to happen is, as we start to align our inner selves with our outer selves more, that'll help the process as well. Because there's also the fact is, if someone's telling you something and they consciously don't want you to know what they really feel, they're kind of putting up a wall at the same time. So there's some of that. What's going to happen is as we start to align our inner selves and outer selves more, to the point that there's really no difference between our inner and outer selves. There's no barriers within ourselves that are also facilitated as well. And but it's really there. Those communications always are coming through. All you have to do is just when you speak with people, just open up your mind and listen. Another exercise they gave is when let's say you're sitting around and you're doing something, and you're not thinking about anyone, you're not thinking about this particular person, and they keep popping in your mind, chances are they're thinking about you. And if you just put yourself into a quiet state and just open your mind to hear what's coming through, you'll often pick up things. And what will happen is, the next time you speak with that person, let's say somebody might pop into your mind. And we've often experienced this. Somebody pops into your mind and they call 5 minutes later. That's a pretty common one. But it might start to become more detailed, where someone pops into your mind, and you go back to focusing on whatever you focus on, and they pop into your mind again. And you say, "Oh, this person must be thinking about me." So you relax and you open up your mind, and let's say you start thinking about a baby. You start hearing about a baby, and you just start, this idea of a baby comes into your mind. And the person might call 5 minutes later and tell you their wife was pregnant, for instance. So you'll start noticing things like that. So it's just a matter of opening up to the communication that's already there. That's basically what the idea was. And if you just practice doing that more and more, and next thing you know, thoughts will be coming in from everywhere.
Right. It starts clarifying. That my biggest challenge with the whole telepathy thing has been that duplicity within other people, as you mentioned earlier. Have reading one thing and sensing one thing, and them voicing something different.
That's right.
So, and I think this is, as we're developing these things, I think we also, at least for me personally, I found that I have to use my discernment. I have to definitely use my discernment when practicing this out in the world with those that I'm not very intimate with, where I can't openly speak with. I have to be very, very discreet with how I deal with the things that are coming through, especially when they're of startling nature. If you get something really disturbing from somebody, you don't just blurt it out there. We do have to realize where we're still at here on planet Earth and where the rest of society is at in their own development. I mean, the people, the percentage of us that are truly, and in earnest seeking and trying to develop these things is pretty damn small on the planet right now. I mean, those numbers are growing, but there still is.
That's right.
We are still a very small sliver of the pie. So So I guess what I wanted to put out there was that discernment factor that we do have to use when we're trying to learn and develop these for ourselves, and also not let the lack of confirmation in those types of things discourage you, because I've also gone up against that wall myself, where I get a real tough nut to crack, where I'm receiving one thing and they're saying something else, and then when you pry into it or try to draw that out, you meet that wall.
That's right.
You can't let that beat you down and make you go, oh, this is all baloney, and what I'm getting is wrong. It's all wrong. You're just gonna have to take a deep breath and just move on. So.
Yeah. I was gonna mention that yesterday I actually experienced that 2 times. I actually text a friend of mine, and I told her about something that we were like waiting for, and she was like, "I was just gonna text you to ask you about that." And then. Yeah, and then the other one was even funnier, because I had for lunch this fried it's like fried pork with an egg on top. I live in Japan, so it's like a popular dish here, on top of rice. And when my wife that's what I had for lunch. When my wife got home, she was like, that's what I wanted for dinner. And she said that she had that in her mind all day, that's what she wanted for dinner.
Awesome.
But I had it for lunch. So there's many occasions where, especially between close friends, families, and lovers, that increases more.
Right.
Is that because I've always heard, because when 2 people get involved, whether a friendship or relationship, their energy starts to mix more. Is it because of that, or what do you think?
My experience and understanding of it is simply that we let those barriers down with that person. We have this idea that everybody is a stranger except for these 2 people. Everybody is a stranger except for my family and my friends and my lover. So these people, we let those barriers down, and we're more willing to listen, right? How often do a person, a family member or a friend could be going through a hardship, and we'll treat that person like us. But, somebody down the street or across the planet could be going through the same hardship, and we don't pay our mind at all. So it's simply that we're not paying attention. We're not paying attention to these other people, and we're not opening ourselves up to these other people, right? So what happens is, because we're selective in opening up, we mistake that to mean that there's some kind of special thing going on between this person, when really we're selectively choosing who we're going to open up to, and selectively choosing who we're going to really listen to, right? Because chances are, if we have a lover, if we're in a deep relationship, we really want to hear that person. We want to know what that person is feeling, because we love that person, we care about that person. We want to be able to meet that person's needs, and the same thing with that person. So they want to know what you're thinking. Right? They want to know. That's one of the biggest complaints about relationships. We don't communicate. We want to know. One or the other, if they're having that problem, want to know what the other person is thinking. So we want to know what our lover is thinking. We want to know what our children is thinking. So we're open to these people, and they're open to us. The thing about societies like the Palladian society and a Sasanian society, they see everyone on the planet as their family. Right? If you ever listen to Bashar talk about that society, he says everyone on that planet is in love with everyone. Mistake that the planet is telepathic. It's not because they have some kind of special thing. It's because they're allowing that connection that's already there to be there. That's all it is. So what's going to happen is, as we start to recognize every single person on Earth as our brother, as our sister, as our lover, in a sense that, we have love for this person, a universal love for this person. When we see this person as important to us as our lover. That doesn't mean we have to sleep with everybody on the planet, but we have the same amount of care. You understand what I'm saying? We have that same universal love for everybody. We see everybody as our family. and those barriers will go down, and that telepathic connection that's already there, we'll be aware of it. So it's not really a something special. Is that we're especially letting those boundaries go. So that's why it's often there between lovers and all, because we let those boundaries go.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with that too is that the word love is so misconstrued in what it means, and for a lot of people the word love doesn't mean the caring for someone. It means the chances of getting hurt, or it just means straight up pain. For a lot of people, that that's what that word means to them. So I think it's one of the reasons why the shutdown. If I'm too open when I'm walking in the street, then I become vulnerable to attacks and all sorts of things. That goes the same with the spiritual community, where you have to create this bubble to shut yourself down from psychic vampires or psychic attacks, and so on and so forth. Do you feel that has any truth for you, or how do you?
I think that the love that most people are talking about are really not love. I remember Byron Katie talked about the romantic love that we have, which means that I want to get something from you. I want to possess you. So really, when we speak about love, even with the people we think we love, we're not really talking about love. And we can see that when the person doesn't do what we want them to do. That person that we love, when they no longer do what we want them to do, or they do something that we don't want them to do, that love very quickly turns to hate, which means is really what it really was. Love, if it's really love, is unconditional, and is there. Whether we have a romantic relationship with this person or not, is there whether we're family or not, and that same universal love can be applied or manifested in different forms. So you can have that same universal love with a person that's your lover, and it'll manifest in different ways in that relationship. You can have that same universal love with your next door neighbor and the person around the world, and it'll manifest in ways to fit that form, right? But what happens is, if someone does something we don't like, and we are hurt, or if we fear we're going to be hurt, then we know that there's something tainted about the love that we feel. There's something selfish. There's something that's not fully on par with what I think I'm feeling, and that's what I think the issue is. We think we're talking about love, but when we're really talking about conditional love, third density love. Right, and that's where you have the give or take, hurt or be hurt, do what I want you to do and I love you, meet my conditions, and if you don't, I don't love you, so often relationships in our world evolve into that. The first month or so or year, everything is like heaven, but so often after that year, more conditions come out, more stipulations come out, more judgments come out. We found out that the person hid things about themselves, like a relationship I was in, certain likes that she had, she pretended not to have because she think I wasn't going to like it. Certain dislikes she had, she pretended not to have because she thought I wasn't going to like it. So, after we were a year together, and I started hearing, I don't really like to do that. Well, we've been doing this for a year. What are you talking about? It's one of the things I thought we had in common. So, so that wasn't really love. What we had on the first day wasn't really love because that person didn't really love themselves. So often we don't really love ourselves, and then we hide who we are. We present a false picture to try to get, because again, that love is about getting, about owning, right? And it's not really love in the first place. It's not really love in the first place. True love is there regardless, which means if I truly have an unconditional love and there's no conditions, that means it's there whether you're there with me or not. The love that I have for me is there regardless. So whether you're with me or not, it's equal. And that's the difference between third density love and fourth density love. Third density love says if we're together, then there's gain. So if you're gone, there's loss, so I miss you. Not to mention if you're gone and you're with somebody else, So often in relationships today, there's a stipulation that you can't, I don't want you to hang around that person anymore. That person is your ex. They don't want to get with you again. I don't want you to have friends of the opposite sex, right? Right? Because really, it's not really love. It's about ownership. It's about protecting ourselves from the lack that we feel inside, the emptiness that we feel inside, which no one else can ever do, right? So what happens is the emptiness we have inside, we project it out onto that person, and we think because of what that person did, they hurt me. Or if I open myself too much, they're going to hurt me. But whenever I read or learn about people who are absolutely open, like Byron Katie, or people like that, or Mother Teresa, they're completely open, and they're impervious to being hurt. They're absolutely impervious to being hurt, because they're really based upon that true love. So I really think we have to make a big paradigm shift so we can understand what love is, and realize the fact that often what we think is love is simply just possessiveness or selfishness, but when we truly are in that love, then it won't matter. That's why there's no jealousy in like the Palladian society, because they realize that whether they're with someone else or not, that love is still unites everyone. Everyone is united regardless. So whether I'm with you or not, that love is there. Whether you leave or not, that love is there. Whatever you do or don't do, I'm complete within myself, so how can I possibly be hurt? So all of that really has to do with the individual that's afraid of being hurt. That's where the pain really lies. And when that emptiness is healed inside, then all there is openness, because that's what love is. That's one of the things that love is. So that's why the most advanced people we could think of, they were always spoke about love. I don't know if you're religious or not. I don't consider myself religious myself as spiritual, but I mean, in my experience and understanding, Jesus was a real person on earth, and by all accounts, I mean, he was a very loving and spiritual person. Mother Teresa, Byron Katie, so many spiritual personages in India, and they were very open and loving. So that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are going, wow.
Well, very well said, and thank you.
Very well said.
Thank you.
I'm glad we're recording.
Yeah, I think, I think one of the things that we do to ourselves in all of our relationships, both the intimate and the casual relationships that we have, is we sabotage ourselves with our own fears. And and those fears that you pointed out there, we project that out there into the world, and we help create it. We help create those fears that create turmoil within our own lives.
That's right, and that's the painful part of it. I mean, we blame the outside world, but really the world is the effect of what we have inside, and until we heal inside, we'll continue to see the same projections over and over and over, because it's the effect. So, but that's the benefit, once we start to realize that, then we can start to utilize those experiences, and instead of trying to fix it again in the world, we can say, what am I thinking? What am I believing that's causing me to interpret things in this way, so that we can let go of those interpretations, and then things start to become more and more easy, more and more free,
Yeah. Well, let me talk to you about empaths, because I've met a few empaths, and Tom himself had an experience where for example, a friend of mine, we were hanging out outside of this bar, and this woman walked by, and she looked normal. I mean, from the outside appearance, nothing special, and he started to cry. And what it was is that she was so distraught inside that he can pick that up, that he started, crying. For a lot of empaths, it's really difficult for them, and they just have to end up shutting it down completely because they just can't handle it. And Tom had an experience. Tom, actually, you tell him the experience.
The fairgrounds?
Yeah, that was in Seattle, right?
Yeah, it was actually here at the Southwest Washington Fair. I'm pretty tapped in energetically when I focus on stuff. I can really I have a pretty good on-off switch. So my girlfriend and I had gone to the local county fair, and It was I guess it was a Friday night or Saturday night. Anyways, it was pretty packed, and we were just walking through the crowd, and I told her, I said, I'm going to open up and just kind of put my feelers out there and see what happens. And so I stopped, and I just standing there in the middle of the crowd. I closed my eyes, and I just opened everything up and just started soaking it, just started sensing. And I was so overwhelmed. I mean, it was like, oh my God. I mean, it was so much that my back started hurting. My legs started shaking. My whole body just got, I got really, really wore out immediately. It was quite a startling event. And I tried to shut it off, 5 seconds later, and I was able to shut most of it down, but it had such a lasting effect on me that I was spent for the rest of that night. We'd only been there for, not even an hour at that point, and I was like, I have to go. So I guess, on the positive side of that, I realized that I do have a pretty good on-off switch and am able to turn it off. But when you focus in, I guess you got to be careful with what you do with this stuff, because you can take yourself into some pretty unpleasant and uncomfortable places.
Yeah, and my question behind that story is because it almost sounds like you're saying kind of the opposite, and I'm wondering what is it, because I've experienced a similar thing too as Tom. What is it that we're might be doing wrong or not doing that we're getting overwhelmed by these crowds?
I would say those things are two different experiences. Like in the first situation with the empath, like the person was just walking by, and this person, he became overwhelmed with the negative feelings, right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't trying to listen to her or feel her out. She just walked by, and he just sensed it and became overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say that in my experience, we could only become overwhelmed or with something that's already within us. Like there's absolutely no way that anything in the world could affect us in a negative way unless we've already ourselves chosen that negative interpretation, right? Otherwise, in a sense, there could be no such thing as spiritual advancement, because, you would have to have a world of spiritual masters in order to experience spiritual mastery, because everybody around you would be constantly bringing you down otherwise. So what that means is that we have the ability to choose our own experience. Right, so that person had to already have pain inside to have that resonate with him. Otherwise, he would not be able to resonate, which does not mean he would not be able to perceive what that person is feeling, but it would be a perception that'll still be different from his own core. He would have to have that in his core already in order to experience that. A good example is, in the same relationship I was telling you about, I never cheated on this woman, but she always thought I was cheating. And no matter what I did, she thought I was cheating. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with her own internal beliefs, right? So all that person that walked by did was be a symbol of what this person already had in themselves. Otherwise, they would not be able to get overwhelmed with it, right? So if I was that person, I would look into myself and say, wow, what is this fear I must have inside of me to where this is resonating with me so strongly? And when I question my own fear, my own hatred, or whatever that negative emotion is, and I start to undo it within myself, someone else's negativity simply will not be able to overwhelm us. As a matter of fact, it'll start to happen the other way. We'll start to be a symbol of peace or fearlessness. We'll start to be able to be and that person that they can choose differently. I don't have to be this sad and depressed. There's absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way you could overwhelm Byron Katie with sadness. There's no way you could overwhelm her with anger. And people have asked her, how can you be so open? Aren't you afraid? Just like you said earlier, those fears. She said, I've been like this way for 30 years and nothing has happened, but I'm open to it. Yeah, what she would say, but I'm open to it, there's no way you can do that. Just like in my understanding of Yeshua with the Course in Miracles, he felt no fear, no pain, because he so thoroughly cleared out that negativity within himself. So since there was no negativity in him, there was no way. It's like we're all tuning forks, and the only way someone can make us resonate a certain way is if we already have a tuning fork within us of that frequency. Once we get rid of that tuning fork, we can acknowledge and recognize that someone else is resonating with that, but there's no way their tuning fork is going to be able to resonate with ours or make ours resonate because we're on a different frequency. But we can become a symbol or an example of the fact that that person can make the same choice, right? Now, with Tom's experience, you opened up. You opened up and let all that in, and it's just like with anything. You could drink too much water.
Exactly.
And you will be overwhelmed. If you just open up your mouth and let somebody pour water down your throat, you're going to have problems after a while. Somebody even died from drinking too much water. So the fact is, we in a sense, we have a circuitry, and that circuitry, it could take so much voltage until we develop it. One good example of this is at one time I was doing chakra work. This, I guess, was about 10 years ago, and I decided to overstimulate my brow chakra and my crown chakra at the top of my head to see what happened. And I spent some time just putting all kind of attention and just putting awareness and stirring and stimulating my crown chakra. And it got to the point where suddenly my head just started burning. My head just started burning, and it felt like somebody took a pot of oil, like they just not finished frying up some food and had a pot of hot oil and just poured it on top of my head, and the hot oil just started running down to my brow and my crown chakra, and that's what it felt like for like a day. And whenever I thought about the top of my head, it just started burning for like a week or two. It took like a week or two for my non-physical body to heal because I so overwhelmed my circuitry with energy. So I think that's what you did. Yeah. You went from a position of not consciously being telepathic so much. Maybe you might be telepathic with your wife or what have you, to stepping into a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people and letting all those vibrations run through you. That's like taking a regular appliance and plugging it straight into the power company. That thing is going to get overwhelmed with that trigger. Those wires are going to burn out. So that's just a situation of plugging yourself, taking a 10-volt cord and plugging it into a 1,000 volt power circuit, and that's all that was. So
it was an experiment, and it definitely was an experiment, and I learned. So we are at the top of the hour.
Let me just ask one more question.
Okay.
Well, one more, and then we'll shut down. With the same kind of, I forgot. Never mind. Okay.
You'll come back. I'll do that.
You can start the next hour out with that, Ramon. You'll figure it out during our break here.
It just burned out.
All right. So, Darryl, the book's coming out on June 20th. Everything's still looking good for that date?
Everything's looking good for that date.
All right. And I'll
make sure I send you to a copy.
Yes.
All right. So www.darrylberryjr.com. That's DarrylBerryJr.com. And there are links on the info for wherever you're listening to this at. So anyways, we're going to come back, and honest, guys, we will talk about out-of-body travel in the next hour. Oh, but this was some good stuff, Darryl. Thank you.
Oh, this was amazing.
And yeah, I think Darryl's definitely made it on my A-list. So, all right, guys, we are going to take a short break, and we will be back in hour 2. If you are out there listening on one of those other media formats, then I would urge you to pop on over to www.the100thmonkeyradio.com and consider being a member and helping to support Ramon and I and all that we're doing. And yeah, good stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff there too, by the way.
Yeah.
We will see you guys in hour 2. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry. So we'll be back as quick as you can press that next button.
Namaste, my friend.
Welcome back to the 100th Monkey Radio Show with Tom and Ramon. And we got a wonderful guest with us. Before we start, just want to say thank you so much for supporting us all this time and really helping us out. As always, I can't say enough thank yous, even if you're tired of me saying it every week. I just want to make sure that you know that we appreciate you. And that goes for our old members and our new members and every member. So just thank you so much. So we're back with Darryl, and I remember the question I was going to ask, and it had to do with what was it? With people who go into seclusion and then feel like they've advanced a lot and then go back to the city and they're overwhelmed by that.
So in my experience, like those are really two different scenarios. Like the person who goes into and goes alone and with the idea of seclusion, of separation, they think they're advancing, but they're not. And a good example is Byron Katie. She was not one of those people that went into seclusion, but she just happened to live like in a desert, you know. And when she became enlightened, as most people see that she is, people came to her, and everybody who came, when she talked about how people described her, they said that there's this lady who's like a light inside. All right. So the difference is, all the masters that I'm aware of and that I've read about, like the Buddha, he said there's one mind appearing as many, right? And as we know, the story with him is he went alone, secluded, and meditated under a tree. But when he became advanced, he didn't have difficulty coming back. When he became advanced, he realized he already was back, because there's nowhere you can go where you can separate from the one mind that everyone is a part of. So that's the difference. I think there's a difference between secluding yourself with the idea of seclusion and actually thinking you're separate from people, you know. And in a sense, you're doing the opposite of what Tom did. Like Tom went and went into a crowd and opened himself up, believing he was a separate person in the crowd, and it overwhelmed him. This person is believing they're a separate person, going away to be separate, and now believing that they've been more separate at a heightened degree of separation, and now they have difficulty coming back. But anyone I'm aware of that has truly become enlightened, they recognize that whether they're with a group of people or whether they're off on a desert island, there really is only one mind, and they start to see and perceive themselves as that one mind. You know, one of the descriptions of spirituality is to become your higher self. You know, to be able to perceive and think as your higher self. And one of the definitions of enlightenment is to be able to see and perceive the world from the perspective of the universal mind or the world consciousness. So spirituality is not about shutting yourself out, even if physically it appears you are. It's about opening up, and opening up is really not about an individual opening up. It's really about an individual letting go of the individual and accepting their identity as the universal mind, right? And if you're the universal mind, in a sense, you become the circuitry that all minds are flowing through. So it doesn't matter if you're with one person or if you're with a million, there's still only one mind, you know? So that's my understanding of that. So I mean, I think a lot of times the reason why people do that is because we want to experience ourselves as spiritual, but not really take the step. Because the ironic thing about enlightenment is no person ever truly reaches enlightenment. And let me explain what I mean by that. If enlightenment is to let go of the ego, that means that the moment before enlightenment, the ego decides against itself. The ego decides to let go of the individual perspective in favor of the universal perspective. So the enlightened being no longer has an ego, right? So there is no individual mind for circuitry to pass through. All there is the universal circuitry. So I think if a person goes into seclusion and comes back and say they're so enlightened that they can't be around people, I would really question whether that person really made progress. They could be really trying to have their cake and eat it too. Have their individuality and separation while trying to still carry on the mantle of being a spiritual being. And there's no spiritual being I've ever heard about or read about, and including my own spiritual experiences. I'm sure I'm nowhere enlightened, but I've had my peak experiences. I've had my experiences where, like I had this one experience where I was contemplating myself in the world from non-dualistic perspectives, these perspectives like we're talking about. And in my life, like in school, and so on and so forth, one of the things that I prided myself on was my intelligence. I used to get good grades in school and stuff like that. But I started thinking, if the truth is there's only one mind, right? And every single individual being is simply a reflection or a fragment of that one mind. And that means there's really no such thing as intelligence. That means what we think of as intelligence is an illusion that we're creating by the amount of denial that we perpetuate to create a certain effect. And I have an out-of-body experience to directly reflect this. Like one out-of-body experience I had, like I said, as I got older, they became more about purpose of things. Oftentimes I won't practice unless there's really something that I really want to investigate. So I started to think about different periods in my life where I did something that I wish I would have done differently. So I started to think what would have happened if I would have done the different thing. And I was aware of alternate timelines and things like that. And so I started practicing again, and I got up to the point where I can get into a good altered state. And I got into an out-of-body experience. And instead of observing this alternate timeline like I thought was going to happen, I actually entered the alternate timeline. I entered my body in that alternate timeline, and I became that younger self. Meaning, even though I had decades of experience after that time, all my future information was gone. I was that person at that age. I experienced everything the same. My perceptions were the same. I was that person at that age. It's just when that choice point came up, I made one different decision, and I lived out the fulfillment of that decision in that alternate timeline. And then when that decision played itself out, then I was back in this timeline with all my knowledge restored and so forth. But what that showed me is that right now, all time is now. So that means that within the universal mind, since all time is now and it's only one mind, that means in the universal mind, what's going to happen tomorrow is already in our mind. What's going to happen next year, next decade is already in our mind. So the reason why we don't know it is because we deny and we repress that information away. So we can have the experience of being an individual being in an individual world that knows the past and doesn't know the future. So we can make all the mistakes we make, so we can project our guilt out because we're choosing separation. Right? It's a construct. We make it that way, So, but what happens is, enlightened beings they let go of those boundaries and they become that universal mind. So it's really a conscious decision to push away the universal perspective of ourselves and choose denial and repression and belittling ourselves. And that goes back to that experience I had when I was contemplating these things and contemplating it in regards to one of the cornerstones of my own individuality, my intelligence. And when I started to really understand that there's really no such thing as intelligence, that intelligence is really a construct that we make by our own denials. A person who seems intelligent, this is one of their lifetimes where they deny only in certain ways to where they can process information, whereas this other person, they deny in certain ways to where they have a lifetime where they're not as intelligent. And everything disappeared. And I experienced myself as being a mind that was like totally beyond. I mean, there was no thought in the sense that we think right now. It was like I was the mind that was thinking the self that I am right now. Like the self that I am right now seemed like a little bitty figment, So from that perspective of mind, like imagine a person that's the base of their reality. the base of their reality is to recognize that every single individual mind is simply a part of them. It doesn't matter if they're in the desert or if they're in the middle of a city. All there are is them, And then when you get beyond the person, everything is mine. This table is mine. The mountain is mine. Everything is a projection. So there's no way to escape mind, because everything is a part of the same projection. So I would say that person that really believes because they're in the desert and they became so enlightened and now they can't go around people because these people are their vibrations are so low. That's a common thing from people. I've been studying so long and I've gotten so spiritual and now I can't watch this movie because there's so much violence and shooting in that movie and it affects my vibrations and I can't go around those people. They're so negative and they're selling my vibrations. It's just a way of trying to hold on to individuality and separation and clothe it in spirituality. Basically, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. So that's all that is.
Well said.
I mean, can you imagine the Buddha being sullied by going around a certain person? I mean, people went to the Buddha so they can become enlightened. You know what I'm saying? So you mean to tell me if you're spiritual and someone who's unspiritual comes to you because they want to become more spiritual, now suddenly your vibrations are going to be lessened? Obviously, that's a contradiction there. So it's just an impossibility. Somebody says that being around you sullies their vibrations, so they got to get away from you. What they're doing is they're projecting their own choice for separation onto you, right? And then holding on to that separation, but blaming you for it. That's all that is. So, and that's what that person was doing. Whoever it was that came from the mountains, they were still holding on to their separation, but saying, "It's you all. That's the infringement upon my peace of mind. So I need to go back to the desert because being around you all is such a disturbance to my holy peace, my holy mind. It's a contradiction.
Yeah, there was something else we were talking about on the break, and with the, as far as like, how can I word this? With the awareness of, things going on around you that might be kind of shady or you might be picking up on certain violences that are about to happen or something like that. And I've had the experience where, I'm at a bar or something and I get a funny feeling and I get out of there, or I'm supposed to go to a party and I don't go to the party. But then there's other times where things happen and I have to be there. But we were talking about how you might live in somewhere like Japan where the crime rate is pretty low, and then you go to New York where the crime rate is very high, muggings and shootings and so forth, and how for a lot of people who live here, like New Yorkers who live here, going back to New York really depletes them. This time, not so bad. The first time I went, I wasn't expecting it. The first time I went back to New York, but the last time I went, it wasn't so bad. But how you just feel exhausted because you feel like you have to be aware all the time. Is that just another fear playing out, or?
Well, you mean like the actual negative incidents in the world itself, or just your feeling of trepidation?
I would say both.
Right. I can speak to both of those. Like the actual feeling of trepidation, that's only you. Like we can only feel lack of peace because we ourselves are choosing separation. And there's nothing that can happen in the world. There's nothing that can happen in the world that could move our peace of mind, but that we choose it so. Nothing. And again, otherwise it would be impossible to reach spiritual advancement if we're subject to the whims and the tides around us. If we was all some boat without a rudder, that we have to be careful about who we're around because their vibrations is going to sweep us up. It would be impossible. It would literally be impossible to become enlightened. Even if you go off in a mountain somewhere, because again, if you go off in a mountain and you really believe you're separate, that's because you're not spiritually advancing. Inevitably wherever you are, if you progress, you will recognize that there's only one mind, which means that whatever negative feelings are inside you in order to truly progress, you're going to have to deal with it. And we have to recognize that whether I'm in a mountain or whether I'm in the middle of the city, if I'm afraid, if I'm angry, if I'm upset, whatever negativity I'm feeling, it always goes back to something I'm feeling inside. And that's why the people who are truly enlightened, you know, Yeshua, Byron Katie, Mother Teresa, Ramakrishna Paramhansa, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj. You know, you could look up these people. Nothing could affect their state of mind. Nothing could affect their state of mind. Doesn't matter what happens. Nothing could affect their state of mind, because the world is the effect, not the cause, right? So the effect can never affect the cause. You know, is just the nature of it. It can't happen. So I would say if you're feeling afraid, then you have to look within yourself and say, what am I thinking? What am I believing? What is this fear inside me? And that doesn't mean that we're not going to still be attentive, but the nature of it will be different. You know, there's a difference between being attentive because you realize something might go down and being afraid. You know, you could be attentive that something is about to go down and realize, you know what, I don't think I want to get shot or stabbed, and leave. But that feeling of fear and trepidation, and that's where that's why oftentimes people have a fight or flight out of fear. You know, you can have a fight or flight response, or you could just have a valid response to what's going on. You know, oftentimes, I mean, we've all experienced this, especially in school. You know, oftentimes the most afraid person would be the one that always wants to fight because they're like the bully. And what does the bully do? They pick on somebody that's weaker to them because they're really afraid. And as a defense against their fear, they try to pick on someone weaker than them so they could, by comparison, feel strong. You know, is all the defense against the fear. And what actually happens is if you constantly find yourselves in situations that make you afraid. Now, and this is going back to the other side, to the situations. The fact is, the way the world is set up, it's a duality. You know, good and bad happens. You know, if you think only positive thoughts, and all you think is positive thoughts, at some point something bad is going to happen. That's just the way it is. That's just the way the world is set up. At the same time, if you think nothing but negative thoughts, you know, something good is bound to happen at some point. That's just the way the world is. You know, but the fact is, there's a sort of leeway, like there's sort of a multiple choice script. And there are some instances where our positive thoughts will cause us to, you know, make a right instead of a left and avoid getting mugged, or our negative thoughts will cause us to make a right instead of a left and get mugged, right? There's a certain amount of play that we have in that. But overall, the play in that is not so much. You know, there's a big fad nowadays about, like, at least I guess not so much now, but like The Secret and the Law of Attraction, and if you think only positive thoughts, and that only works so much. You know, that only works so much. There's a certain amount of leeway there, but the fact is, the world is a world of duality as it is now. Some people are born into good situations, some people are born into bad situations, and it's a normal course of the day. Good things are going to happen and bad things are going to happen. In the normal course of a life, good things are going to happen and bad things are going to happen. And to a large extent, there's nothing we can do about that. You know, to a large extent, there's nothing we can do about that. What we can do, what we do have unlimited control over, is how we interpret it. And again, that goes back to the first point about how we look into ourselves. If something happens that makes us afraid, we can look into ourselves and look into our own fears and start to look into our own investments in separation that makes us project out threat to experience that fear. And again, that doesn't mean that if I'm fearless, like Byron Katie, you know, she's a fearless person, but that doesn't mean she doesn't look both ways before crossing the street, you know?
Right.
But it's just the way you can do it. You know, you can walk down the street terrified, thinking you're about to get robbed, and every time you see somebody, you kind of wondering, or you could just walk down the street and be aware and just respond appropriately. But there can be no fear. As a matter of fact, you can respond more appropriately fearlessly than not, because how many times are we afraid and it clouds our vision? Like we talked about relationships earlier. How often are we so afraid that we project our fear onto this person, and this person who is never going to cheat on us, now they're telling us, I might as well cheat because you keep accusing me of it. You know? People have said that to their spouses and their boyfriends. You keep accusing me of this, I might as well do it. Are we so afraid that this person is going to leave us that we hold on so tight that they feel smothered and they leave? So the fact is we could respond more appropriately when we're peaceful and when we're fearless, and we do that only by looking within ourselves. And what happens is when we're fearless, that leeway I was telling you about, that little bit of leeway that we do have, to where that person, for instance, that girlfriend I would have had that wouldn't have left if I wasn't so afraid of her leaving and I held so tight. If I wasn't so afraid, maybe we'll still be together now. So there's some leeway. But the fact is, there's some people who, no matter what you did, they were going to leave. If we address our fear inside, that person that was going to leave anyway, like for instance, we was talking about universal love, we address our fear and separation inside and recognize oneness, whether that person leaves or not, we're still going to feel secure within ourselves. Which means the person they'll leave, we know we didn't do anything to make them leave. We were ourselves. And the person that stays, we're not doing anything to push them away. But still, we have no investment in whether they leave or stay, because we know that we're complete inside. Right? Yep. So a person that's afraid, they may be able to manipulate this person into staying to defend against their fear of being unworthy, for instance, their feeling of unworthiness, but still they're not going to feel complete because they haven't addressed their inner fear of unworthiness. Right? So that person that stays, they still don't feel complete. So they always want them to do more, to prove your love to me. My birthday came and you didn't buy the big, last year you did this, but you didn't do this today. Why didn't you call me today? Do something to show me you love me, because I feel so insecure. I still don't feel loved, right? Or the person that leaves, of course, and that speaks for itself. I feel so unworthy. This person left me, and that's why they left. So the next time I'm going to lie a bit better, and I'm going to present a better picture. I'm going to wear more shiny shoes, and I'm going to paint this picture of myself, even though inside I feel worthless. So, if we feel worthless inside or afraid inside, no matter what happens in the outside world, we're going to feel afraid. And if we feel peaceful inside, no matter what happens on the outside, we will feel peaceful. Except when we're peaceful, we'll be able to respond better. And when we're fearful, we'll respond in a way that reflects our own fear, so that we could then look within ourselves. But the way the world is so structured, we're so invested in projection that all we continue to do is project outside. That's one of the contributions that Freud made. He talked about projection. He talked about the fact that we look within ourselves and we see within ourselves and put it onto other people. And there's also introjection. We take what we believe is lacking in ourselves and we try to put it from other people. Just like when people go to sporting events and their team wins and you would think they were on the field,
Right.
Or people wear a certain clothes made by a certain person and they think it increases their esteem, right? Because they feel bad inside and they're trying to introject to take this value that they see outside because they don't see value inside, which is why they have to keep doing more and more and more, which is why a person could, when they make $1 million and that's not enough, they got to make $1 billion. And they make $1 billion, it's not enough. They gotta make $1 trillion and control everybody, and control everything. It's not enough to own one corporation. Now we gotta buy everything out and make these big mega corporations. It's not enough that we took over America. Now we gotta colonize Iraq and everywhere. It's never going to be enough until we look inside and heal what's inside.
Well said. Well said. Again. All right. So, I think we probably should devote a little bit of time during this interview to. This has been awesome stuff, by the way, and
awesome.
If you're up to it, we're definitely going to have you back on again. Because
that sounds great.
Just definitely, it's resonating quite well with me. So
yeah.
So out of body travel. Now I got to wrap my head around a whole different subject here. It's not really, but it is. So walk us through the process. What first of all, for those, I don't know that we'd have any listeners out there who don't know what out-of-body travel is, Ramon. Walk us through the process that you go through to project yourself out of body.
Okay. First, let me give the basic methodology behind it. Right. My idea of the way I do it is based upon altered states. And one of my best teachers, this guy named Lewis, who mastered it very well, he realized that basically, which is also what Robin Monroe realized. Basically, when we get into the theta and delta range of brainwave activity, that's where the out-of-body experience happens. You know, if you go into Robert Monroe, he made his brain sync where he learned to entrain people's brains to certain brainwave frequencies. And he started to observe what happens at certain brainwave frequencies. So the name of the game is being able to go into the theta or delta range of brainwave activity and remain conscious. Right? So basically our conscious aware state right now, this is the beta frequency of brainwave activity, which we call being physically awake. Just closing our eyes or just watching a movie, our brainwaves start to slow down and we start getting into alpha. When you start getting into meditation and deep meditation, you start to be able to see and visual imagery in your mind. Sometimes when people go to sleep, they have that hypnagogic imagery. Right, or as they go to sleep, they see images in their mind. That's theta, and delta is when you're in deep sleep, very deep sleep. So the name of the game is learning and practicing how to go into these altered states while remaining conscious. And what I've done is over the years, I've collected and developed a bunch of techniques to allow us to do that. So one of my main techniques is what I call the fortitude meditation. So this is, I've projected in all kinds of different ways, but I'm just going to give you just like we can start with just like the basic template of what an average projection would be like. So let's say I would sit down and I would start to inhale to the count of 4, hold my breath to the count of 2, exhale to the count of 4, hold my lungs empty to the count of 2, and just keep repeating this rhythm. It starts to become very entraining, very relaxing. My body starts to slow down. I notice my breathing starts to get slower and slower, even though I'm still keeping up the rhythm. And at a certain point, I might let go of the rhythm and just allow myself to sit still. And what will happen is I'll start to experience the altered state phenomena of alpha, the alpha rate, because then we go from beta, then we go to alpha. And some of the things you might notice in alpha is, for instance, you might notice flashes, yellowish flashes of light, not multicolored, but it's single colored. Like usually for me, it's the color of yellow. So let's say I might see this yellow graininess start to come behind my closed eyelids. And a common one I would experience is suddenly this yellowishness will start to form into these rings, these circular rings. And I will see this dot in the center of my field of vision, and it'll open up into a circle, and you'll see just a constant barrage of rings. I don't know if I'm describing this well, but like if you imagine a circle and it opens up into a ring, and behind that ring is like a circle that's repeatedly opening up into these rings, like a bullseye. You know what a bullseye looks like. But if you imagine those rings constantly expanding from that center circle, I will see that, and it will be made of yellowish light. That's when I know I'm in alpha. So I might sit in alpha for a while and say, okay, I'm in alpha, so then I'm going to try to get the theta. I could either just sit there silently and allow my body to continue to go to sleep, or allow my body to continue to relax and naturally go to alpha, or I might use a different technique. Another technique might be counting down. I might start counting down from 50 to 1. It's 50 in my mind, 50, 49, 48. Relaxing, imagining myself slow down. Or I might start visualizing a shape. I might visualize a red square in my mental vision and just hold on to that image and just allow that single focus and calm to allow myself to slow down. Or I might, for instance, just relax, just physically relax. There's many different techniques you can use, but a common one is counting down from 50 to 1. So let's say I'm counting down from 50 to 1, and I start to slow down more and more and relax, and I'll start experiencing colored imagery. And again, that's theta. If you close your eyes, and at any point you start to experience color and imagery, you're in the theta range, which means even when we daydream, if we're standing in an elevator and we have to go 5 more stories and we just have a moment where we start to lapse in attention, and suddenly we see ourselves on the beach, or suddenly we're starting to imagine ourselves doing whatever, and we have a visual image of us doing this, what's happening is a portion of our brain is dipping into the theta range, and that's how we're able to have that visual imagery overlapping, right? So what happens is you're sitting with your eyes closed, or I might lay down at that point, and I start to see these visual images come. So I start to see, let's say a face might appear, a face looking at me. And sometimes it might be an actual non-physical being. Or I might suddenly see myself like I'm looking at a movie. And let's say I might be seeing somebody walk down the street. Or it might be an actual scene from a movie. You know, one common visual image I used to have, even though I'm not really into sports, but I'll be sitting there, and when I start to hit theta, I will suddenly see a bunch of football players on the field playing. So I'm just sitting there, and suddenly, boom, my eyes are closed, but I see like I'm looking at a football game. I'm just watching these people play football. So then I know I'm in theta. I'm looking at this visual image, and I'm seeing this colored visual image. I know I'm in theta. So what I might do at that point, if I was still sitting down, I would usually go lay down at that point, or I may have laid down already when I got to alpha. But usually what I do is I start sitting down because I realize that, you know, in times when I will practice a lot, when I want to go investigate something, you know, I realize that if I go straight to laying down, I might fall asleep. So what you do is you start by sitting down and you hit at least alpha. So that when you lay down, you're already along the process. So let's say I did my 4 to 2 meditation, I hit alpha, and I go lay down. As soon as I lay down, boom, I'm right back into alpha. Then I'm going into theta with my 50 to 1 countdown. So now I know I'm in theta. I'm seeing this visual image of these football people playing, and I know I'm in theta. So now I might do another technique. A common one that I made up is what I call relax move, and which goes directly against any other thing I've read about out of body experience. Most people say you can't move at all, but you know, as you know, I started without reading books, so I do some unorthodox things because, like you said, nobody told me you couldn't do that, right? So what I would do is, like for instance, I might realize that one of the things that happen when you go into trance, like we talked about earlier about the energy, you know, when you open up your circuitry, when you start to meditate, what happens is your energy flow increases. So you might start feeling yourself vibrating, or you might start feeling like ants are crawling across your skin. Sometimes you might feel like spider webs are strewn across your skin, because what happens is as you start to relax, it allows energy to flow better. And when that energy flows, if it's flowing stronger than you're used to, it can feel uncomfortable, and you can start feeling all kinds of sensations. Just like when you open yourself up to all that energy of those people, there's more energy than you were used to, so you started feeling sore and all of these things. So what happened is I started to move to get rid of this discomfort. So and of course, as you start to do energy work more, your energy body develops and it goes away. But whatever situation I was experiencing at the time, maybe I didn't practice in a long time, I started practicing again, and I would move to get rid of this discomfort. So what I realized is, maybe what I can do is I can continue to move. And if I make a habit out of moving, I might catch myself and move out of body. So let's say I will lay and I will relax. I'm in theta, so I'm seeing this visual imagery. And I would just be sitting there relaxing, watching this visual imagery. And at a certain point, I would just move into a different position. So let's say I'm laying on my back, and I would just move to my side. I would turn to my side, and I would start relaxing again. So I moved and I, disrupted myself a little bit, so the imagery might go away. But I turn to my side and I relax again, and soon the imagery is there again. And it might change. Let's say now I'm looking like I'm in the sky, looking down from the sky. It doesn't matter what it is. But when you know you're in theta, when you're seeing some kind of color in what I call your screen, when your eyes are closed. So I continue doing that. I turn to my side and I relax. And I'm relaxing deeper and deeper and deeper. I'm relaxing. Then I turn to my other side and I relax again. And I might relax, let's say, for 2 or 3 minutes. And after 2 or 3 minutes, long enough to where I get a good relaxation in, but not long enough to where I fall asleep, I move again. So let's say I might relax and move 10 times. And now, all of a sudden, instead of looking at image in my mind, I am in the image. Now, instead of looking at football players on the screen, now I'm immersed in the imagery. Now I see myself on the football field. And without me even realizing it, I believe I'm a football player. Now I'm in the imagery. So now I'm on the football field and I go to run. But now, what's wrong with my legs? All these football players are running past me, but my legs, I can't move them. And then I realize I'm paralyzed, I can't move. Then I recognize I'm in delta. When you get to delta, you could experience things like numbness, heaviness, paralysis. When you hear people talk about sleep paralysis, that's what's happening. They happen to become aware while they're still in a delta state. And when you're in a delta state, you can't move. I looked into it a little bit, but there's some kind of physiological thing about it, about, some kind of chemical secreted or whatever, or some kind of disconnect happens to make sure you don't act out your dreams while you're sleeping. But suffice it to say, when you're in very deep sleep and you become conscious of it, you cannot physically move. It's like you're paralyzed, right? So now I'm going into deep data and I see this deep imagery, and now I'm going to delta. I think I'm a football player on this field. I realize I can't move properly, so now I realize, hold on, I'm in paralysis. So then I physically go to move, and I'm paralyzed. So then I know I'm in the proper state. So from this paralyzed state, I'm fully aware that I'm in deep delta. I'm in a paralyzed state. I can't move physically. My body is absolutely numb. It feels like I've been shot up with Novocaine. So then I relax, and I roll to the side. And next thing you know, I roll away from my physical body. And that's a common one right there.
That's what happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happens. That's what happens to me, for the exception of the right around that theta, I will lose consciousness and wake up in the paralyzed.
Oh, awesome. There you go. So all it is you just have to practice a bit more so you don't lose awareness as much. And the more you practice the altered states, what I call, like I said earlier, that flexibility of consciousness happens. And eventually, as I said, you get to the point where you never lose consciousness. You're just conscious all the time. But again, that takes some getting used to. But, but yeah, that's awesome.
I heard one person talk about gamma, but it's hard to find any information on that.
Yeah, I've listened to a Coast to Coast interview on that, and there's only one man that I know that got into it, and it's actually faster than beta. It's actually above beta. I mentioned it in my book, but that's really what I say. I just heard one person talk about it. It's faster than beta, and I don't really know about it. So I don't really know about gamma. Okay. It's an interview that I heard years ago, and he talked about what happened, but it's something that's faster than beta, and people can rarely do it. I don't suggest it. I dabbled around with like brainwave generators before. Generally I just like to do stuff normally myself, because then you could teach anybody how to do it without needing some kind of technology or anything. But I dabbled in it just to see what it was about. And you can get these brainwave generators, and you put the headphones on, and it's supposed to do like the Hemisync. And I put it in very, very fast beta, and it almost hurt, so I don't apparently he has some kind of brain anomaly that allowed him to do that. He has some kind of physical difference with his brain that allowed him to make his brain go faster than beta. Like beta is, I believe, around, I don't know exactly, but let's say beta is around 12 or 20 cycles per second. And he was able to make his brain go like 30 or 40 cycles per second and do some strange things with it, but that's all I really remember about it.
Sorry, Tom. Is it like a sleeping state, awake state, or? You
mean gamma?
Yeah.
He was awake. My understanding is he was awake. He was awake like now. He was like super awake or something. But I mean, I really think that's an anomaly. Like any of the extraterrestrial races, like we talk about the Pleiadians and the Essassani, all of these races deal with the alpha theta range. So I don't really think it's really worth looking into. I really think that that the universe itself, the way the universe is designed, is more towards the alpha theta delta direction. I think that's really an anomaly. I mean, maybe there's some kind of way to use it, but he's the only one I ever heard mention it. That's the only time I've ever heard it mentioned. I've only heard him on that interview one time. I don't remember his name, so I don't really think it's worth even going into. And I really think for most people it'd be dangerous, because again, he has some kind of physical difference with his brain. So, and I've explored using the brainwave generator, where I make it go down to theta or delta, and it might help you go into a meditation state. But when I try to make it go really fast, that kind of hurts. So I don't think it's even healthy for a person with a normal brain. I think it's some kind of anomaly, the way the wiring is.
Yeah, I think that's if there's something there, that would be something that maybe is presented to us once we've mastered this place.
It's possible. It's possible, yeah.
Yeah. Mm. So I'm curious, when you do actually, when you finally get out and you're out of body, do you find yourself primarily in your same environment primarily, or do you find that more often that you end up in a different environment?
Well, actually, that has varied depending on the like usually I practice in pockets. You know, like when I was a kid, it was like a long pocket of so many years. And like, I used to mostly be stuck in the physical world for a long time. And then I would hit a pocket where I'm mostly stuck in the non-physical. So it just depends on, like, I remember at a certain point in my as a kid, I used to just walk around in what we would call the physical world, or some people call the, real time zone all the time. I would say now I'm mostly stuck in the non-physical. Like, oftentimes I would find that, let's say I do like I said earlier, and I roll out of body and I stand up. And it would happen so often, I would try to focus on it. I was like, okay, I'm going to walk through that door, and I'm going to stay in this world as I walk through that door, right? And I walk through the door, and then I'm in the non-physical realm. It's like, what the hell,
right.
You know? So,
exactly. Yeah.
You know,
well, the reason I ask that is because that's what I've run up against here most recently is that everything is taking me into the non-physical. I mean, when where I want to be in this world, I want to go check stuff out. I want to explore here from that place. I want to go fly in our skies. And I end up always, it's like constantly I'm ending up in these completely different realms. And, yeah.
Yeah, like the door or the glass window becomes portals. I think the last time I went through a glass window was, as soon as I put my hand through it, it turned to like a rainbow color, and I was somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And have you ever had the experience where, for example, you're flying in a non-physical place, but then your ears are attuned to something happening at home or at a friend's house?
Yes, I've had that before. I remember one time I was at work, because like I said, I have to go through my purge, and I was in a period of time where I was practicing a whole lot, and to the point that I would be going out of body at work. So I was on my lunch break, and I put my head down on the desk, and I went to an altered state, and somebody started stapling. And it was the most horrible experience ever, because the sound was amplified to a degree that I can't explain. Like, I felt the sound. It reverberated through me. And every time that person stapled, I heard it. My non-physical body cringed. It was just horrible. So thankfully the person stopped stapling, and eventually I just set up out of body, but my lunchtime was soon over. Another thing that I experienced where I had that sort of duality, I was feeling depressed at a period of time for whatever reason. This was before I knew all about the inner fact of everything. I guess it was I don't know how old I was, maybe early 20s or whatever. And I decided to find something higher. I decided to find something, you know, greater to try to connect with. I thought if I connect with something higher, that will, you know, fix or heal or help or whatever, or elevate or whatever. And this was a period of time of high practice. So I was able to easily go to an altered state. And what I did was I just kneeled down on the floor, and I put my hands to the floor. Like, I put one hand on the floor, and I put my other hand on top of that hand, and I put my head to the back of my hands. And I just did something that I went within and without. I just focused all my attention inward, and I just focused all my attention outward. So like I said, this was a level of high practice. So I didn't have to do all that preparation I mentioned earlier. I was able to just focus and go. So I went within and I went without, and suddenly I was out of body in front of this massive being, you know, for lack of a better word, and it looked like a star. And it was just radiating love and acceptance. It was just radiating love. But I didn't know that at first. When I first was in front of this being, this entity or this whatever, I just saw like a star. And then I saw all these shards of things just coming at me. Like if you can imagine like the sun, except you can actually see shards of sunlight instead of just light everywhere. So these shards were just coming off of it. And then when they hit me, it was just absolute and total love and absolute and total acceptance. And we talked about that all of those those negative investments ourselves, our investments in separation, that's really the cause of our pain. That's what I felt. When that love and acceptance hit me, I immediately became self-conscious, because I felt that there was things inside me that if this, whatever it was, knew about, wouldn't love me so much anymore. So I tried to shield myself. So I literally, I'm in the non-physical realm floating before this whatever, and I started to just shield and clothe myself as hard as I could, just shut myself down. If you read Robin Monroe's book, she talks about that. He would be out of body and he would see this curl, as he called it, just shut down, no vibrations coming from him. And that's what I did. I just shut as hard as I could, but it did not work. That love just and acceptance just kept coming, and when I thought, it's going to get that layer and it's not going to like me, and it went through that layer and it just went through, and then when it penetrated the core of my being, it still loved and accepted me, and then it just flew through me, and then these waves and of love and acceptance were just blowing off parts of my aura. Like I noticed that there was literally parts of me that was being blown off. Like if you imagine like a comet going near the sun, and you can see like the tail of a comet is really the solar winds blowing away parts of the comet, and that's what it seemed like. Like it was just blowing away parts of myself that I didn't need, and I was so just overwhelmed that physically I started to wipe the tears from my eyes. So simultaneously, I was floating in front of this non-physical being, being overwhelmed by love and acceptance, and at the same time, I was physically in control of my physical body, wiping tears from my eyes as I was overcome with this emotion. And this is spoke of in the Monroe Institute as well. Like what they do is they like they're sitting in the booth, and they get the hemisync sounds, and they go into the altered states, but the entire duration of their out-of-body experience, they're physically dictating into a microphone that's hanging in front of their mouths, step by step, what's going on. And Tom Campbell calls it parallel processing. So, and it just goes back to the fact that everything is thought, everything is mind, and our experience as a physical body, that's a false perception. Our experience as a non-physical body within the physical body is really also ultimately a false perception. We speak about being in a body and so on and so forth because the experience is so strong. But in truth, it's really a false perception. So, and what happens is, as you start to, and when I say as I start to experience it more and more, because like right now I'm out of practice, I would have to practice some. But like in that period of time, when I was one of my purest pockets of practice, you're able to physically and non-physically be active at the same time. So, and then you could see how you could be in a non-physical experience or be in a dream and be hearing physical sounds. A very common experience is, at least for me, I used to have. I would have my alarm on, and and the alarm would go off while I'm sleeping, and then in my dream, I would, for instance, an ambulance would pull up.
Right.
So the ambulance is in my dream going off. I'm like, what the ambulance is doing there? And I finish doing what I'm doing, and then I wake up and, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late for work, right? Because I heard the alarm, and I pulled it into my dream, and I made a dream image about it. So, but as you start to practice more and more, you start to be able to consciously have that parallel processing thing going on. So,
I think my nephew's got a question here.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Jake. Thank you so much for the information. It's
you're welcome.
Great. So about every morning around 3 o'clock, I wake up and I have another hour before I have to get up and get ready for work. But I use that time for my meditation. And the steps that you were saying, how to get out of body, and with the imagery and through Alpha and all the other ones, you basically described exactly what I'm seeing almost.
Awesome.
While I'm meditating. But my question is that now I find myself getting to that first person point of view, and I realize, what I've been realizing is that I'm dreaming. And from what you're describing, it sounds almost like a out-of-body experience along with the lucid dream. So how did those two kind of tie in? Because I'm not in this reality, but I'm in a reality that I'm very comfortable in, and that I know that I'm not in this reality. And like you were saying, how your legs go paralyzed. Well, I feel that paralyzed feeling, and instantly I know where I'm at. So I take a couple hops and I'm flying, or I'm talking to somebody, or different situations that I'm doing. But I'm fully aware that I'm still, in this other reality in bed, waiting for my alarm clock to go off to go to work.
That's right. And it gets really complex when you get into the dream scenario because, again, the whole universe is a dream. But then when you step into the dream as a physical body, this is one of the things that happen. And I'll give you several of the different instances of what could be going on. When we normally think of a dream, like a regular dream, what it really is just a personal hallucination. Just like when we're physically active, and we talked about, like, if you're in an elevator and you have a lapse of attention and you have an hallucination, that's what we really call a dream. And what can happen is when you're going into that altered state, and let's say you see yourself in this imagery, your non-physical body can still be right there, either in your physical body or hovering close to your physical body, and you're imagining, you're having a daydream where you experience yourself, like me on the football field or flying around or whatever. So really, you're not really in a non-physical area, really. You're really in a self-created environment at that point. Now, the tricky thing about it is that self-created environment is still made out of thought. It is still an environment, which means if you imagine something long enough, like let's say if you imagine a castle, and you imagine that castle, what you're really doing is you're taking non-physical matter and you're starting to form it in that shape. So your personal imagery in your mind is having an effect on the actual non-physical dimension, and eventually you can actually build a non-physical dimension that you could really leave in your non-physical body and visit. So that's how it can be really confusing. The way that you break through all this confusion about whether it's just an image in my mind, am I really here, or am I really in the non-physical realm, and what's going on, the way that you get through this confusion is to simply go back to your body, right? Whether you believe you're really in the non-physical realm, if you're unsure about it, about what's going on, feel for your physical body. And one of two things is going to happen. Like, let's say, in my experience that I had, when I told you when I saw that football field, then I'm in the football field, right? At that point, when I feel my legs not being able to move, so you felt your legs not being able to move in that imagery, know right there that you're what you're really doing is you're having a dream imagery that you're imagining, but your non-physical body is still with your physical body, and that's why you feel like you're unable to move, because you're still connected enough to your non-physical body and your physical body, because you're not fully asleep, that you recognize that you can't move. You feel for your physical body, but since you're in that deep of a state, when you feel for your physical body, you'll actually be feeling your non-physical body, and then you relax and you roll out proper, right? And let's say that you're not sure what's going on. Just feel for your physical body. If you're really in an out-of-body experience, then you just reinitiate the experience. So, you could exit it and re-exit many times. So let's say you're flying around and you're thinking, okay, I don't feel there's a limit in my movement, but I'm not sure. This seems kind of dreamy. Focus on your physical body. Feel for your physical body. And boom, next thing you know, you feel yourself lying in bed again. Then you relax, and roll out. And then you're in out-of-body experience. Or you relax, and you intend yourself to be at a certain location, and then you're in an out-of-body experience, and that cuts through all the confusion. Because that can get so complicated. Whatever's going on, just feel for your non-physical body, reset the experience, and then manually exit or manually intend yourself to wherever you want to go, and then you'll know you're in an out-of-body experience.
All right, great. Yeah, that sounds really good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I've only heard one person talk about this, and that's in that state, from doing out of body so much that you're able to physically teleport from one place to another.
I believe that's possible. I've never done that before. I haven't gotten to that point.
Oh, okay. Tom?
Okay, so, well, I guess here's a question for you. Do you see what's the value of, do you see a difference in the launching point, in where you launch from, whether you're launching from a unbroken linear train of thought or through the dream state? Do you see what's the difference between those two places?
There's a big difference because, and it's not necessarily a difference in the experience, it's a difference in our perception, right? Because like I was telling him, if you're in that reverie experience, you don't really know what's physical and non-physical. You don't really know what you're imagining, what you're putting in a situation. So you could often allow yourself to get caught in reverie and believe you're in the out-of-body experience and not even be in the out-of-body experience at all. You know, your non-physical body could be sitting there hovering over your physical body, and you think you're in a non-physical realm when you're really just stuck in your own imagination. And it also, like I said, if you come out of a dream, let's say you come out of a lucid dream, I mean you come out of a dream and you realize that you're actually in a non-physical, you don't know how many projections you could have in the environment. It could really muddy things up. So that's why a lot of times if I'm not sure, I reset the experience from my physical body again, because things are just clearer. A good example in the physical world, because since everything is mind, a lot of times the physical inventions mimic what's going on with the mind. So if we look at a computer, if you're on your computer and you're surfing the web a whole lot, your cache starts to build up, and it starts to slow and clog your browsing. So what you have to do to clear it up is clear your cache. And when you clear your cache and you open up your browser again, there's less interference. So that's what I find fueling for your physical body does again. And resetting the experience, it clears your cache, right? So you were sitting there thinking about whatever you were thinking about that might have muddied up the experience. You clear all that stuff out, and you reset the experience. And for instance, when I went to that source experience, there was no dreaming or hallucinations in between. It was just putting my head down, focus, and boom. And I was having a very direct, clear experience, a very direct, clear perception. And it's just so much more clear. It's just so much more productive and effective, just to have that very clear perception. Just how it is much more effective to browse with a browser that has a clear cache than to realize you're trying to put up a web page and it's taking 5 minutes because there's just so much crap in your cache, and there's all kind of viruses popping up. You got to clear that stuff out. So it has a very, very big effect, because all of the things that we put into the experience that muddies it up. So
for me, it really took that shadow of doubt out. It took it completely out of the picture when I was able to launch through meditation without a break in my linear train of thought. I mean, it took every shadow of doubt about the experience away. Going from after I've already passed that sleep veil, and the lucid dream or out of body experience through that area always left that shadow of doubt. Was that just a dream? So when I was able to actually go through the full blown, the conscious intentional stuff, wow. I mean, that one really knocked my socks off.
And that's still no reason to discount those other experiences at the same time. And this is for him as well. Is your friend still listening that I spoke to earlier?
Absolutely.
Right. So now this is another experience that will reflect the other side of that. Because I mean, the fact is, sometimes when we're not clear, like for instance, when you have that experience where you're going into the altered state and you lose that lapse of awareness and then you come through again, you may not be conscious enough to actually think about feeling for your physical body and resetting the experience. You might just be in the experience. And one experience I had was this was a period of semi-practice. And I met my friend Lewis, and we were friends for a while at a time, but we go through our moments where we talk for a little while. We may not talk for a few months or a year. We were talking again, and I was like, okay, let me test Lewis out as well as test myself out. You were just talking about confirmation and getting that doubt away. So I figured what I would do is, now Lewis, if you call me an out of body explorer, he's an out of body addict. I mean, he is an addict. I mean, he got to the point where he could be conscious all the time and he can deal with it, right? So I mean, he's a master at it. And okay, I said, let me go out of body and I'm going to visit Lewis. So I laid down and I probably went through my meditation and stuff, and I focused on going to Lewis, and I lost awareness, I lost consciousness, and I came to somewhere, in just somewhere. And I was in, but I missed the part about the confirmation. What I did was, before before I went into the experience, because when you're in the out of body state, you can, you can change your appearance. There was a whole period of time, but I think for like about a few months, I went out of body as a female. Like I changed my non-physical appearance while I was out of body as a female. And so you can make yourself look however you want. So, what I did was, before I went out of body, when I was going through my meditations, my pre-flight meditations, I changed my appearance so that I was wearing a long white robe. I was wearing a long white robe. And I put a gold ring around my robe. I imagine I had a gold ring around my chest. And I also had something else devised. I was going to tell him pineapple or something. So something weird so that he can tell me about it, but I think I forgot about that because it wasn't clear enough. But I definitely made myself look like a person wearing a long white robe with a gold band around the center of the right robe. Something you don't see every day. And then I did my out-of-body thing. So I became aware with Lewis. I'm sitting in front, I'm in front of Lewis, but it seemed so dreamy. If I didn't have all of my experience, I would think it was a dream. I mean, it looked like any normal dream. You know how those dreams are. They all kind of fuzzy when you remember them and you think about them. It was so dreamy. And I'm sitting in front of Lewis and we have a conversation and I'm feeling all droggy. And, and later I wake up. But in my mind, I knew I had an out-of-body experience. But if I was conscious enough, that would have been one of the experiences I was telling him about. You probably would just want to reset. But I wasn't conscious enough at the time. I was in front of Lewis and I just was talking and that was the experience. So the next day I called Lewis or he called me. And, we would talk about every day at this time. We would just talk about whatever. We talk about out-of-body exploring. We'll talk about, whatever. We would talk about other things as well. And we just started having our normal conversation. And I was determined not to mention anything about it, or else I would ruin the experiment, right? So I wouldn't, if I told him I saw you out of body, then it would ruin the scientific aspect of it. So I didn't tell him anything. So we were just having our normal conversation. And then he just out of the blue said, "Oh, Darryl, I saw you last night. You came and saw me out of body." I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah, you was wearing this big white shirt. You look stupid, with this gold band around it." I'm like, "No, it wasn't a shirt. It was a robe, He's like, "Yeah, it was this big white shirt with this gold thing." He was making fun of me. And he was like, "You was drunk." He's like, "You looked like you was drunk, man." He was like, and I was like, "Awesome," So it looked very dreamy. But again, I didn't tell him anything about it. I didn't tell him I was going to do it the day before. I didn't tell him I did it afterwards. But he described what I looked like. He described the state of my mind, everything. And to him, it was definitely an out-of-body experience. We were both out-of-body experience in the non-physical realm. And he flew up to me. He was like, "Oh, Darryl." And he's like, "Why are you drunk, dude?" But to him, he was, of course, fully conscious. So the fact is, a lot of the things that we remember as dreams are out-of-body experiences. And there's so many times that I've gone out of body and I've seen people, in my physical world life, and they have no clue about it. There was this one time in high school when I used to practice pretty often. And this is the experience when I went and saw Robin Monroe. I went and saw Robin Monroe after he died, and he was teaching a school in the area of the non-physical called the Park. And I saw him, and I flew away, and I saw this female from school, and she was reading a book. She was in the non-physical realm. She looked as conscious as day, And when I saw her in school the next day, and I was looking at her, I was waiting for her to say something about it, but she clearly had no clue. I mean, we weren't friends or anything, so it's not like I felt comfortable walking up to her and asking her about it. But I saw her in out-of-body experience, but she had no clue. And Robin Monroe mentions this about sleeper school. There's schools that people go to while they sleep, and they just don't remember it. Another experience like this is another experience of practicing a lot. I think it was around 2002 or something like that. Maybe 2000. I don't remember exactly, but I kept a lot of journals, but I kind of lost the dates of things. So, but I was practicing a lot, and I went out of body. Actually, this is one of the experiences where I just became aware in the experience. I came aware mid-experience, and I saw one of my ex-girlfriends, and this is one of my ex-girlfriends that I haven't spoken to in years. But I still talk to her on Facebook. And a matter of fact, I asked her about this experience for the book. I was like, "You remember that experience I had where I told you? Do you mind if I mention your name in the book?" She's like, "Oh, go ahead." So, but what happened was I went out of body, and at least I became aware out of body. And I saw my old friend Lou Jr. and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So I went and flew by her, and I started talking to her. But I noticed she was with 3 other people. And again, I haven't spoken to her in years at this point. And the this guy, I'm trying to have a conversation with her, like, hey, how you doing? You know, trying to catch up with her. And this guy comes over, like, trying to stop me from talking to her, you know, very defensive, very jealous. I was like, oh, that must be her boyfriend, you know. And I looked at the other two, and it was this guy and this female. And I said, oh, I guess that must be, you know, they must be together with her or whatever. So I tried to talk to my friend, and this guy just wasn't having it at all. That jealousy we was talking about earlier, that insecurity. I was just trying to have a conversation. So I just flew off, and I did my thing. And the next day, I still had her number. I went and at the time I didn't have a cell phone, so I had to go like look for my little paper pad, you know, this the ancient days, and picked up my little phone and like actually pressed the buttons on the phone. You know, I couldn't just press the button to dial. And I called her up. She still had the same number at her mom's house. And I was like, hey, you know, and she was one of my friends that I talked to about this before. And I was like, you know, I saw you out of body the other night, and I saw you with this guy who, you know, he didn't want me to talk to you. And then I saw this other guy, this other girl. She was like, ain't that something that you mentioned that? Because she was like, you know, I have a boyfriend, and I have my best female friend and her boyfriend, and we go together everywhere we go. We're always together. She said, that's so odd that you called and told me that. So this is the person I haven't spoken to in a long time. I didn't know she had a boyfriend. I didn't know about her friends, and I saw her with a guy out of body, and I saw, you know, another couple, and it turns out that in the physical world, she's always with these three people everywhere they go, you know. So and she had no memory of it at all. So you know, it gets really tricky when you get into you know, the dream aspects of things, because you know, sometimes dreams are really out of body experiences that we're not really conscious of in the experience. And of course, sometimes things we think are out of body experiences are really hallucinations that we don't really aware of what's going on. Usually the biggest telltale of that is you can't move properly, because your non-physical body is still stuck to your physical body. But sometimes, you know, you're deep enough into it that you can't tell. But the way to get through all of that is just to reset the experience. Worst case scenario, you wake up, you just get a little bit more comfortable, relax. You were so close to the experience, it's easy to go back into it. You relax, you intend yourself to the other side of the planet, and you just teleport there out of body. And but it's very interesting though about the other people who don't have an awareness of it, but some of them could be so conscious during the experience, but not all of them are. I remember one time in one of my periods of practice, and I used to channel, like I mentioned in my bio. I practiced channeling for a while, and I happened to contact a father from a previous lifetime when I lived as a gray. I used to be a gray alien a long time ago. I have a whole lot of lifetimes on Earth, but it was a lifetime where I was a gray alien, and this tall, 7-foot tall gray with bridges on his head was visiting me, saying he was my father in a different lifetime. You know, he helped me out a lot. But I lost awareness, and he brought me aware. He was like, you know, Darryl, you're in a non-physical experience, and I became aware. I'm like, oh, I'm out of body, you know, and I flew away and did my thing. And I met this guy from high school, and he looked like he was drunk. He must have looked like I looked to Lewis, you know. And I tried to make him aware, and there was nothing I could do to make him aware. It was like he drunk like 5 pints, and he was just out of it, and there's nothing I could do to make him aware. So you know, it's very interesting with that. But you know, go ahead.
No, it's so funny that you say that about the whole drunk experience, because I've had I wouldn't really call it out of body. To me, it would be more like lucid, and I felt like I was completely high. And no, actually, it has happened to me in out of body where there's no energy, and I roll out of the body, and I'm completely weak and barely could stand, and it's just easier to go back to the body because I can't stay out.
Well, yes, yeah, I had that experience several times, and really, all you have to do is keep moving. Like if you're in that experience, just keep crawling. And usually when I'm in that experience, it feels like you're crawling through molasses. I mean, yeah. It's like, it's worse than like you're moving underwater. And all I do, I just find myself onto my hands and knees, and I just keep crawling. I just keep crawling and keep crawling and keep crawling. And eventually you get far enough away where you can move. And of course, like I said earlier, usually I get farther enough away, and then I'm in the non-physical realm or something like that. But you just keep crawling away. Just keep crawling and keep crawling and keep crawling, and that'll do that. You know, another thing that helps with that is just basics practice. And what I mean by that is like practicing concentration, practicing relaxation, practicing energy working, and building the foundation. And going back to those analogies, just like we talked about how you have a computer and you clear the cache. The same thing with, like, if you look at like what we're talking about now is, in a sense, superhuman functioning. Like, it's a normal part of our human psyche, but the fact is we let it atrophy. You know, most people are not aware of this. That's why that's why it's something to talk about, right? Because it's something that most people are not into. So it's just like, if I was to go try to fight Ronda Rousey in the UFC, she's a female, but she would whip me, right? She would throw me in the armbar in 5 seconds flat, right? Because she is trained. And so that's where we're at. In order to, since we're not used to this level of functioning, we have to develop. You know, Ronda Rousey, she does push-ups and sit-ups and cross-training and exercising, and she does repetitions and repetitions of these movements. That's what we have to do. So the more that you practice relaxation, the more that you practice concentration, the more that you practice energy working, right, you'll start to develop these non-physical muscles in a sense. And you'll find that those instances don't happen as often. You'll find that you're able to move more freely because, in a sense, those non-physical muscles are a bit more developed. Now, to a certain extent, still it just happens sometimes. I mean, sometimes it just happens when you get out of body and you just happen to be in one of those groggy states. But I find that in those periods of time when I practice more, when I practice the basics more and I just practice more, I experience it less and less. And I think because what happens is we start to become more and more focused into the non-physical, to where it becomes more so our base of operations. You know, like Lewis, for instance. I mean, you know, it's like he lived out of body and came back to his body. You know what I mean? So he didn't have that problem, you know. So it is a matter of familiarity. It's a matter of just building those non-physical muscles, and sometimes it's just, you know, you just have a groggy day, you know, just like physically. Sometimes you just wake up groggy. So it's a combination of things. But generally, I would say there's two things. Just practice the basics more, practice relaxation, practice concentration, practice energy working, and that'll help alleviate that some. And also, if you're in that experience, I know it feels kind of gut-wrenching to keep moving. Just keep crawling away from your physical body. Just keep crawling away. And if it helps, just shut your awareness down. Like, you know, if you see yourself crawling past your drawer, just shut your awareness and just crawl blind. And just crawl. And next thing you know, you'll just be like, wow, okay, it feels like I can move again. And you might open up your eyes and be in a different environment, or you might open up your eyes and be in the same environment. Like one time I remember I had that experience. And what happened is I became aware. This is one of those experiences where I probably wasn't even practicing. I think I just went to sleep. And matter of fact, this is an experience I forgot to add to my book, but it's a small experience. But I just became aware, and I became aware in that heavy state where I know I can't move. I'm kind of in paralysis, but I was a bit farther than that. I was more into the molasses state where I was separated, but I was still close to my physical body. I was sort of interpenetrating my physical body, and I had that slow motion molasses moving. So what I did is I just plopped myself on the floor. I shut my perceptions and I was just crawling. And next thing I know, my perception opens up and I'm in the living room halfway through the floor. And it's like awesome, you know? So that's all you got to do. Just keep crawling. And either you'll end up in a non-physical realm, or if you just close your perception and just keep on crawling, you'll end up through the door, through the wall, outside, and you open up your perception and, hey, you know, I made it into the living room or outside, and I'm still in the physical, you know, the real-time world. So that's all you got to do. Just keep on moving away from your physical body in whatever way you can. And I find the easiest way just to crawl. Just crawl.
Keep moving.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just keep on moving. Just crawl.
You know, the other experience that I have quite frequently, it's like I don't plan to have an out-of-body experience. I don't meditate. I just lay down to take a quick nap. And whether it will be in my living room or at work, there's a couch. So if there's no classes, I'll just take a nap on that couch. And I'll have an out-of-body experience, and I'll be at the school alone. But I have the perception like people are coming in. So of course, someone's coming into the school, you want to get up. So I'm trying to get up, and I realize I'm getting out of body, but I want to attend to these people. And then I'm trying to get out, and trying to get physically up, but I just end up getting out. And then when I finally wake up, there was nobody coming into the school.
Very common experience. What happens is the world is really populated with non-physical beings. A common one for me, like we talked about those fears, and a lot of this goes back to I had some extraterrestrial interactions, and one of the symptoms of that is you constantly think somebody's going to break in. So I always thought there was going to be an intruder, and I would get into an altered state, and someone would be standing in the room, or I think somebody's breaking into the window. And I'm thinking there's an intruder coming in. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to help me get up. And just like you said, you being non-physical. For me, most I just be stuck in paralysis. I'm steady trying to get up physically, but I'm stuck in paralysis. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get back into my physical body before this guy breaks into the window and kills me and steals my computer or whatever, And then I get up and there's nobody there. It's just the fact that there's non-physical people everywhere. There's extraterrestrials everywhere. There's non-physical people everywhere. And it is a common occurrence. The way to get around that, I found, is to really, really ascertain that nobody's going to come. Like if this was a period of time when in the physical world you were expecting people to come.
No, because what it was, who I saw coming in would be my boss. It wasn't, sometimes I've had that where there was one, I took a nap at home and I turned out of body and I saw all these people looking through the window, these different people, but I knew then that they were, souls. I knew they weren't real physical people. I knew they were, lack of a better word, ghosts or something like that. But I also knew they couldn't come in unless I invited them in. But in these other cases, it's more like, my boss just got back from work. Just got back to work, and I'm trying to get up to greet her, and, I can't get up.
But at the time, you didn't see, did you imagine seeing the person and seeing it was your boss, or you just imagined somebody coming?
No, I saw her.
Okay, well, that sounds like it could be a projection of your own projection right there.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so it sounds like you made. I'm just what you were saying. I thought you were just saying you felt somebody coming, and you was like, oh, let me get up and address this person. But if you actually thought you saw somebody that was there, and that was a person that you know wasn't there, so it sounds like it was just one of your projections, like we were talking about. Because again, you just laid down. You wasn't intending to project, and that goes back to all that interference I was telling you about. Exactly.
Yeah, just wanted to take a 45-minute nap or something.
Mm-hmm. That's an example of the interference. When we start entering that, when we start losing awareness, we start to project things. We don't know what in our environment is real or not. So that happens. That's a prime example of that interference I was talking about. So in that experience, there was nothing you can do. You wasn't intending on like when I'm intending to out of body experience, and that's what I was going into there. All you do is plan for nobody to be there. Right? You like, for instance, I would make sure the door is locked. I will make sure the phone is off. I'll make sure all of these things. So when I go into that experience, I know, or at least I'm reasonably certain, because I guess you can't absolutely know. People do break into places, right? But I can be absolutely enough certain that if I see somebody, to know that there's not a physical person. Right. But in your case, you wasn't prepared for that. You were just having a nap. So, there's nothing you can do. Except go crazy and try to get back up so you can see your boss. So that's just one of those situations. But what that is a good example of the fact that we project things into our non-physical environment. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And, but that's just how slippery and subjective the experience can be sometimes,
Yeah.
So, Darryl, I'm really looking forward to your book, man.
Awesome. Sounds good.
I really am definitely looking forward to your book. And, if you're up for it, and we'll talk after we get off here, but we're definitely going to have you back on.
Man, I enjoy being here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. So one last question, and then we'll do a wrap-up here. What do you hope to accomplish with this book?
Several things. I enjoy teaching. Like everything I've always done, I've taught it. So I enjoy writing. So a lot of it is just doing what I enjoy doing. This is just one book of many. I'm working on a book about extraterrestrials. I'm starting to get motivated to practice again, so I plan on practicing again and exploring other things. Like Jeff Friends mentioned, I wonder if you could check out Mars. So I might go check out Mars and explore a few things. And by the way, that's one of the things I've noticed that I can sidestep that non-physical realm thing. It doesn't work all the time, but if you want to go to a physical world place and you kind of have that habit of ending up in non-physical realms, what you can try to do is get into a deep altered state and just intend to be there. And of course, sometimes you intend to be somewhere, you still end up in a non-physical place. But a lot of times, if I just intend to be somewhere physically instead of trying to travel there remotely, I'll just manifest there. So that's one of the ways I flew through space, by just intending to go to a certain planet. And next thing I know, I'm flying through space and I'm just going there. Or one time as a kid, I just intended to go to Big Ben, and I just boom, and I was there in front of Big Ben. It's just something about moving from place to place manually that is amenable to going into non-physical realms. But I digress. But I just want to do what I enjoy doing, and spend my life doing something more productive. How I feel more productive. A lot of times we do jobs just to pay the bills, but I would just like to actually make a living out of doing what I love doing. Also, want to see the world change. That's why my company is called Next Density. Because right now we're in transition. We're in transition between that third density state of separation and that fourth density state of unification, which is why we're starting to have the blend. We experience telepathy with our lovers, but we don't experience it with the person down the street. I believe that I can be spiritual and still believe I'm separate from everybody. So we still have that spiritual, speaking about the instance we talked about earlier, we still have at least that inclination to be spiritual, but we still want to hold on to that separation in some way. So we kind of in transition. So I actually want to help the world move along to that next level. Not to say that I can really make anybody change, but just as my own expression of my own change to fourth density, just following my joy, like Bashar talks about, and just stepping in and just doing my part to share what I've learned and to help the world progress. So it's really, really something that's a joy of mine to do, and I just hope to write more books, and eventually I want to actually open a center where I could have classes there, and people could come and learn things, and I could travel around and have workshops and have retreats where we can contact extraterrestrials. I did that a few times, and I want to get more involved in that. So just really making a life of helping the world progress, and that's what it's really, really about for me. Like books is a part of it. It's just like a part of the overall plan to just be a force to help things progress. Whatever way I can, just as a letting my individual tuning fork ring.
All right, man. It sounds like you got at least my interpretation of an awesome goal. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Oh, but by the way,
you're walking a good path, man. Love it.
Thanks.
I was going to say, before we end, by the way, if you out there and talk to any extraterrestrials, just let them know that they want to get interviewed. You're more than welcome.
Actually, those are pretty easy to come by. I saw one of those in my imagery the other day, because I'm starting to practice again, and I've been thinking about ETs, and oftentimes they'll just put their face right in front of you in the non-physical realm. It's pretty freaky. So, but they're all around, man. But they're not going to make themselves physically known because we don't really want it. Just like with my experience. Like, matter of fact, I'm gonna give you all a link. Like on my website, I share all my I guess most of my ET experiences so far, and I thought I was ready, man. But I went into meditation for like a month, and was called into the ETs, telling them, "Okay, I want to see your craft. Show your craft to me. I'm ready to see you. Let's do it. Take me for a spin. And man, when that craft came out those clouds, I was freaking out. I was not ready, man. Yep. I was not ready. So the fact is, we don't really want that contact. So it's really a process. So, small steps. So, but I'm starting to get used to seeing them non-physically more. So it's small steps. I would say if you really want that physical contact, start having some non-physical contact. Start thinking about them when you go into meditations, and they'll start showing themselves to you. It's very surprising. It's very surprising.
Only once I was able to see one, and it was a gray in a vision, and it was actually, I was on a plane, and I was just meditating, and I just saw this gray, like, standing there, and I was trying to talk to it, but couldn't talk to it, and then the vision just disappeared.
Awesome, man. I was here. And chances are, you say you were on a jet in the air?
Yeah.
Man, chances are there could have been a craft nearby, you know?
Probably.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I would count that as a big success and build on that. You know, I think if you have contact with any kind of race and you focus on that same race and develop it, you know, because I used to have visitations when I was a kid, and I was kind of thinking back towards that same race, and they appeared like 6 blocks from my home, you know, and then I saw like a dozen of them over a lake. So I would think towards that gray and say, okay, let me see you all again. And you might be surprised. You might wake up one night, you might have an urge to go look outside, and you see this disc floating in the sky. That's what happened to me. I had this, you know, I started looking up in the sky, and I saw this flash, and sure enough, it was an ET craft waiting 6 blocks from my home when I got off from work. So, yeah, you could probably develop that contact if you really want to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up here, and we will be here.
No, let's keep him from another 2 hours.
I can't keep me for another 2 hours. What are you talking about? All right. I'm going to say thank you so much, Darryl. Man, good stuff and great work. And, man, I just love it. You are you're hitting all the marks, and got to love that.
Yeah, you're just a cache of information.
DarrylBerryJr.com, DarrylEberryJr.com is his website, and come June 20th, I will definitely expect several of you out there, or many of you out there, to pop over there and pick up that book, because you have pre-orders available, don't you? Or
not right now, because I want it to be closer to print time. So you know, I don't want people to wait too long and everything. Right. So I'm thinking maybe like April or May, I'll open up the pre-orders, and you know, I'm getting everything worked out with the printer now, so I may even just start shipping some out early. So I would say around April or May, the pre-orders will open up, and around that time I'll be shipping y'all's copies as well. So around April or May, it should be around the time where I start getting them all together.
All right, fantastic. All right, guys. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening and supporting this alternative